I'll introduce myself first. I am from BLM Tokyo. My name is Jay Carter. I'm the chair of BLM Tokyo. Been with the organization for past 2 years. We've done several events educating on discrimination and racism, and kind of giving the Japanese audience information on what was happening in the US. It was formed out of what was going on during the George Floyd protests and marches. And so we've been trying to be that voice and that information for those types of topics and show how that relates to what also happens in Japan, because Japan's not immune to racism and discrimination. So let's get the introductions to our speakers here, and let's start with Jason.
Hey guys, I'm Jason Boutte. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company in South Korea called Shuttle. Essentially, Shuttle is like a food delivery, on-demand food delivery app, similar to what you get in the States like Uber Eats. I've been in Asia, Korea specifically, since 2007. So I've been here a while and I've seen a lot of different things. And I think that's what kind of eventually led me to, want to get into the business, I guess, atmosphere and what led me to kind of just keep doing my thing. So yeah, that's me.
Appreciate that. Definitely looking forward to hearing more about Shuttle and about the work you're doing and how you got started. Next, let's talk with David. It's the next up on my line here in video. David.
Good afternoon. My name is David Whitaker. I am the president of Taste the Love Kabushiki Gaisha, which is the same as corporation. I'm one of the owners of the restaurant Soul Food House in Tokyo, and a co-founder of the Legacy Foundation Japan, an organization to help African Americans and the African diaspora and allies not have to recreate the wheel when we want to do something different with our lives.
Yes, and I know David personally, and they do good work and have some good food up there in Tokyo. So I'll definitely be looking forward to getting back up that way. Next up, we have Mike, also out in Korea. So it seems like your microphone is on mute.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
There we go.
Okay, I'm Micus Ralls. I'm one of the founders here of my restaurant, KURO Restobar. I started another business before, back in 2020, shortly before the pandemic started. And I ended up selling that business, and I moved forward with KURO just a few months ago. And so I have this resto bar, and again, the name KURO, it actually means black in Japanese, and a lot of things that we do in the restaurant is inspired by a lot of, I'm a fan of Japanese culture and stuff like that, but I've lived in Asia off and on for the past 10 or 12 years. I want to say in the past, like maybe 10 or 12 years, I've barely lived in America, maybe 1.5 or 2 years out of those years. So I have a lot of experience living in Korea and experiencing the culture. And so far, I enjoy it, and and I'm just happy to be able to share my experiences with you guys today.
Appreciate it. I thought that was a Japanese name there, the KURO Restobar. It sounded like it was a katakana English.
Yes, black in Korean, black in Japanese, sorry. It means black in Japanese.
Okay, we're definitely gonna get into that. So I think they are ready with the introduction video. So Aaron, if you would, please.
Black Lives Matter Korea was established in June of 2020 in response to the murder of George Floyd. It was created by Black expats living in South Korea. In the past 2 years, BLMK has shown the importance of Black lives by showcasing Black excellence. Thank you for helping us educate through panels, videos, songs, t-shirts, articles, and interviews. We have learned together, laughed together, and danced well together. As BLMK transitions to a simpler format, we'd like to thank everyone for all of the skills they've shared with us. Thank you for using your video, marketing, editing, writing, business, and creative skills so we could educate others in Korea and the world. Thank you for all of your support and participation in the last 2 years. We dedicate this last event to Tara, one of our founding leaders. Thank you for joining us today. Here's our moderator, Jaylon.
All right, thank you, thank you. We also, BLM Tokyo also was started at the same time. It was people out in Japan wanted to do something in solidarity with the folks back home with the marches and the protests at home. And so they organized a march out in Japan, expected about 100 people, and they got much more than that. So people came around and wanted to do some work. And so the organization was founded several events later, and here we are. So we're gonna get into the different business owners here. We did a brief intro with each of them. We're gonna talk about what their businesses are, how they got started, how things are going, and how they're able to navigate the climate of starting a business in a foreign country and out here in Asia. So let's get started with Jason. When did you start Shuttle?
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I started Shuttle in actually late 2013, early 2014. So.
Oh, so you've been in business for quite a long time with Shuttle.
Yeah, it was funny because I never really looked at the tech game as what I wanted to do, but kind of just fell into it. And the company actually, Shuttle, formed out of the merging of two other companies. My company, the company name was Why Not Take Out, and then the other company that we merged with was called Bird Riders. And then in 2016, we merged to form Shuttle. So.
Okay. And so now what you're doing is on-demand food delivery, right?
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. Okay,
and so we're talking almost 10 years ago. It wasn't really a widespread thing at that point. So what made you think about getting into that and starting that up in Korea?
It kind of came out of necessity. I was trying to solve my own problem. Before I launched Shuttle, I had a business here. Well, I had a couple businesses that were like local kind of nightclubs. It's a nightclub in Seoul called Cake Shop and another lounge called Pistol. And when we were doing that, how it is, a lot of late nights, early mornings, and I would get food delivered a lot during that time. And they didn't really have the type of food I wanted. And it was always kind of like a moment in my head, like, why can't I just get a burrito? I'm tired of eating the same stuff. And I looked and I couldn't find what I was looking for. And I asked friends, maybe I was missing it. And they said, no, they don't really have that kind of thing. So I was like, like I could either let this go or I could either go about trying to solve my own problem. And so it started with one day going to a bike shop and asking, because I didn't have any background on how this would work. So I wanted to just know how much would those scooters cost, because that's what I saw those drivers riding around using scooters to do deliveries. And I asked the guy, and he was just so aggressive. He just wouldn't take no for an answer. And he just kind of like, he just got me to buy 3 bikes on the spot for like $900. And after that point, I was like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna get into this game because I didn't want to lose my money. So yeah.
Oh, he must have been a salesperson of the year. He got you to buy 3 bikes on the spot.
He was quite the salesman, I can't lie. Yeah, I guess I gotta thank him though, because I don't think I would have did it if I wouldn't have actually put that money down. Because you know how it is. I know there's like, you know, the economic stuff about like sunk costs. Once you've sunk, the cost is gone. But you know how it is psychologically, you want to get that money back. So
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of an idea at first, and you got the bikes. Was there any sort of other research or anything that you did in order to get it started?
oh yeah, absolutely. I benchmarked a lot of similar companies, like ones back in the States that were doing what we were trying to do. They had a similar company in Shanghai, China. This company called Sherpas that was doing similar stuff to what we were trying to do. And you know, I just did as much research as I could. I actually was trying to convince myself not to do it. I was trying to talk myself out of it because I was like, I'm so busy with what I'm doing already with the club stuff. I don't really want an extra thing, but it just started making more and more sense. Even though my background wasn't in tech, you know, I had good friends around me who were like, you know, Jason, like, just build your website, test it, see what the response is. And if it responds well, just keep pushing forward because it can just keep growing based on like the response from the market. And that's kind of how I took it.
So did you do a custom app? Now I know these days you can get like turnkey apps for like Uber Eats type of businesses, but I would imagine back then it wouldn't have been as simple. So was it a custom build, or how did you go about doing that?
Great question, Jay. Nowadays, you know, you can buy white label stuff right off the shelf. But back then, you know, my background was in, you know, I finished school. I went to university and I finished in finance. So I didn't have a tech background at all. I didn't like computer programming. I wasn't into that. But my friend, he was just like, why don't you just build a very simple website and go from there? And so I did. I built a really terrible website that I was embarrassed to show people, but you know, you start with that and then it just, you know, you get more iterations. And like you said, now we have our own custom solution. We have a proper tech team that handles that. I don't touch it now, but it started with that basic website that we put as a foundation. And then now we have, you know, a proper app that's our custom app that we've built throughout the years, you know?
Okay. Now I want to also kind of switch gears and jump over to David here. As far as talking about research and going into the business and what prompted you to get into it. So what prompted you to get into Soul Food House and the idea for a restaurant?
My wife being pregnant and not wanting to eat Japanese food, wanting food from home. Also, when we first moved to Tokyo, we had started doing Thanksgiving parties every year, and it went from 30 or 40 people coming to the house to, by the 10th year, there being about 200 people that came that were Japanese, foreign. Some people referred people to come to Thanksgiving from other countries. And at the same time, I was doing music events and the venues closed the events down and I didn't want to lose the music community. So the original basis was trying to start a music cafe to continue with the music community. And the first attempt failed, but from that failure, we studied what we needed, built a customer base, and it developed into a restaurant. And it maintains the feel of going and visiting someone's house, because that's what people are missing, being able to feel comfortable when they go out.
Absolutely. And your your base is very much built on the idea of community and support from the community. So did you do similar as far as research into getting started, or what kind of research did you do to secure your place or business?
Off the strength of relationships. So through music, I have musician friends that are also entrepreneurs, and they knew what we wanted to do. We were doing cooking classes for about 5 or 6 years, and we had promotion from the school that my wife was teaching cooking at via magazine, TV, and it just grew the interest for soul food because it's something that's wasn't actively in the market. And you have Japanese people that had worked and lived in the South and came back, and they held memories of that food. And the people that live here that are from that area or that needed that food, they needed something to hold on to. So the customer base was built off of the interest of a food that's different but comforting at the same time, and wanting to know why.
Mm. Yeah, because and as you said, like there's not really that type of place, or at least there wasn't that type of place in Tokyo, especially not to the variety and what you guys offer. So what I'm hearing is both of you guys started, off of a need. So was this the same with you, Mike, with your business?
I actually had been trying to do a business in Korea since about 2013. And I did a little bit of research and all this stuff, and I ended up leaving in 2015 before I could get anything started. As an American, especially being a service member here, there are a lot of scammers out there. I had to be cautious of telling people, certain people, that I had X amount of money, because once you start telling people you have X amount of money to spend on a business, anybody will create a deal for you. And I want to hit on something that both Jay and David said when it comes to the research. The research is very important because money is time, and time is money. And sometimes time is worth more, and sometimes the money is worth more. And it just depends on your overall perspective. When I started KURO, that I have now, started that back in April. I had already had Shuttle restaurant bar that's here near Humphreys. And I learned a lot of lessons with that because I ended up selling that place. And I learned a lot of lessons from that. And those lessons helped me get started with KURO now. And the thing that really made me make that final decision about starting a restaurant and a bar to kind of have the bar club nightlife kind of thing. I'm sitting in one bar, a Korean bar, and it's actually a club, and everybody is in there and they're spending money. And while I'm sitting at the bar, like 10 guys come up and they say, swipe my card. And each time the girl swipe the card, okay, that'll be 300, that'll be 400, that'll be 500. And I'm looking around and I see that all of our people were putting this money into mostly foreign business. And I just thought that maybe, just maybe, I can get a piece of this pie. I can definitely do this. So that was the deciding factor for me, is that I saw how we as a people have buying power. And with that buying power, we can do a lot with that. And so I just decided, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at the research more. So I started plugging numbers in the spreadsheet, doing the research, seeing how much things cost, seeing how difficult and how feasible it was for me to get certain items and which items were a priority for the business. And I rated them in a spreadsheet. and all that. And I still have some of the original spreadsheets, and I'll go back and look back at them just out of pure nostalgia. But the research was very, very important because I had to evaluate, was it or will it be worth my time? Just like Dave said, he has a wife, and so the time you're spending in the business is time you're spending away from your family. And so that time has to be justifiable, because if you're away from your family for a long period of time, and you only come back with 1 million won in profits, it's not worth it. So that's how I kind of evaluated, if I should proceed forward or not.
Now, what is it that you offer there at KURO Bar?
We offer kind of like my own, actually udon noodles. Actually, I'm a big fan of udon noodles. I actually wanted to be in Japan, but it was very hard for me to get stationed in Japan, and Korea is as close as I can come. And so I started eating udon noodles at home and cooking them. And so I had some friends over there said, yeah, I really like this. And so now no one in this area has the type of food that we have. Now, my chef is an actual certified chef. She is absolutely amazing. And she combined her own food. So it started off with Japanese food. So we have Japanese food, of course, the necessities like wings and fries like that, the quick turn and burn kind of food. And she also has her food, from her culture, because my chef is Filipino. And so it's mostly Japanese, Filipino, and American.
Okay. Now, all of you talked about the research, and I wanted to get into that because one of the things that would be difficult in starting a business in general is the research. But I think there's that added hurdle doing that research in a foreign country, in a foreign language, where a lot of the materials, official materials in Japan is going to be in Japanese, and Korea is going to be in Korean. And, we're talking business level language. I don't know what your levels are, but that would make it a little bit more difficult to do that research. How did y'all deal with that, the language barrier?
Do what you must. Like for me, I learned by necessity only. Like if it's an option, I'm not going to. It's not an option, I have to. I'm okay with that.
How about as far as research into the rules and regulations? Things are going to be in that foreign language. How do you overcome that hurdle? Did you get somebody, a native speaker that was going to help, some sort of mentor that guide you guys through?
Well, there's always been friends that have been willing to help. And I also have other bar and restaurant owners that are friends that coach me through parts of the process. So yeah, I had help, but I still had to do the work myself, do the translation of the documents, go to the office and actually get the information, find out what places are feasible to actually do what I wanted to do, whether it's at home or in an actual space. So law of no option. I had to do the work. Even with help, I had to do the work.
You find a similar situation there, Jason?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're playing an away game, and they're not gonna go out of their way to make it work for you, because that's it's just not efficient. It's not optimized. You have a country of 50 million people here, and 95% of them who want to open a business are going to be the local people. So you have to think in terms of just all right, well, how do I get through this and also make allies? I think David said, you want to have people rooting for you, and you want to leverage relationships. And so if you go about it with the right kind of approach, most of the time people kind of be like, well, he's doing the best he can. Let me go ahead and try to help navigate. And sometimes you don't get that, and you have to deal with that too. Sometimes I think something someone said earlier, you ask a question and you get an answer, but you better ask another follow-up question and make sure that you're taken care of, because there's no excuse that you didn't know. No one cares. They're just gonna say, well, you didn't follow this procedure and it is what it is. So you have to kind of have that mentality of, covering yourself and making sure you keep asking more and more questions and make sure you handle everything right, because it's not your country.
Were there resources in English that you could tap into?
In Korea, there's a few different things. They're starting to develop, honestly. They understand that their issue is that their population is actually dwindling. They're in a tight spot when it comes to what they're gonna do in terms of the next 10, 20, 30 years with their workforce. And so they understand maybe the need for like foreign involvement, where foreigners can come and maybe create businesses like the gentlemen that are on this panel. So I think they understand that, and they're starting to create more and more of these like kind of sub-government like organizations, like Seoul Global Center, that's one. Seoul Global Startup Center, that's another one. Seoul Global Startup Hub, that's another one. And they're all focused on this whole foreigner coming in to start businesses, startups in Korea. And so I think they're doing the best they can. Of course, they need some help from people like us to kind of tell them exactly the types of resources they should be providing, but they are providing some resources, to answer your question.
Okay. And did you take advantage of some of those types of resources as well, Mike?
I didn't, because when I started my first business, I started it off with 5 million won and a handshake. And I just went around and just used just natural charisma. And Jason, Jay hit on something. You got to make allies, and it is not my country. I went in with mindset knowing this is not my country. But with that mindset that is not my country, we're actually at an advantage, because a lot of things that we would normally have to be required to have, like a whole bunch of business credit in Korea. Nope, you got the money. You can make the deal with the landlord. You get started. You have the person for the visa, but it just comes down to just making allies. And as you make allies, as you go out, and do these things, and it opens doors for you. I actually managed to learn the language a little bit, and that does open doors for me. And since this go around, this has been my third time in Korea, I still had some allies who were still in Korea from my previous tours over here. And so that ended up helping me out a lot. And without these people, I would not be able to get to where I needed to be. But I still, just like David said, I still had to put in the work. So my experience is more so a combination of some things David had to go through, some things Jay had to go through, mixed in with my own personal things that I had to do to get everything started. Yeah, you just got to have those allies. If you have the time, see, Japanese a little different. David, I understand your situation. I study Japanese a little bit, and it's a little difficult than Korean, because really in Japanese, you're learning three sets of languages, written and spoken, where in Korean, you're just learning the symbols. So, but it does open doors. And you really, and especially in Korea, you really have to understand this is not America, and you can't expect it to be America, and that actually works better for you more than it hurts you, honestly.
No, I don't know if it's the same in Korea. I know in Japan, like you mentioned, there are three different writing systems out here, and then there's the spoken language. But within the spoken language, there's also the honorific and the humble, that it's ways of speaking that can have completely different words in Japanese that are used in business type of communications. So that adds to the difficulty in the Japanese language. I don't know if it's similar in the Korean language, but I know David nodded his head when you mentioned that it was a kind of a benefit at times to it not being our country. You want to speak on that a little bit, David? What do you?
Well, I mean, for me, I was basically introducing an unknown food. So understanding that it's not my country is like the baseline of having to even talk to landlords to try getting into a building, because they know what Chinese food is, they know what Japanese food is, they know what Korean food is. They can't imagine American food outside of the standard fare that people come back and present. So when you're saying, I want to make jambalaya or gumbo, they can fathom gumbo and jambalaya. Once you start going into catfish and country fried steak and macaroni and cheese and the things that we know are Southern cuisine that we eat, their brain goes blank and they're like, I don't know what that is to allow you to be in the place, because I don't know if it's going to cause a fire. I don't know what type of food or smell it's going to make. So it was a large curve of being able to educate somebody, because without the explanation, it's a blanket no in most instances. But if you know who you are, then there's no problem with them not knowing. They can decide yes or no, but it allows you to keep going until somebody says, I want that with me. And it works better, because then you aren't working with people that are fickle on deciding if they'll renew your lease or support when good things happen to your business.
Right. So now, starting with any business, like I know that Mike mentioned that you started out with about 5 million won, which I think is around 3,800 US dollars, something around that, if I'm not mistaken. What did you guys look for as far as funding? Like, how did you go to get funding? Was it savings? Were there grants or things that you could take advantage of? Where would people find that type of information if it were?
I was kind of at a disadvantage because I had been in Korea so long and my driver license expired, and the credit companies and the banks would not accept my passport. And because of COVID, I couldn't fly back to like renew it. They had all these other restrictions. I couldn't do it online because Alabama's years behind. So I just had to do what I can. I had to get started. And that was really a thing for me. You know, I made some deals with friends and family. Hey, I give you back this on this day, and I end up paying money back, and I just did what I had to do. Mine was pretty much the untraditional route of how you do it.
Okay, so you went through friends and family to kind of help get started. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, when I first started, like I said, I just kind of used my savings to get the first stuff right out the way. More so to just kind of make sure I get market fit, test everything, make sure I had those bikes, make sure I had a website up, make sure I had, you know, kind of like a little office set up for people. And so I used my own savings. I want to say I invested maybe about 10 to 15 million right out the gates.
Juan, right?
Sorry, yeah, 10,000, 15,000, somewhere along those lines. And so later I was able to say, okay, we have something here. And so I went about trying to fundraise. And so I did like what's called a seed round with just friends of mine in the community who knew me from doing business and stuff. And so I presented my business plan to them, and I raised in total maybe like $150,000 to push the development of the app and all of the other stuff that comes along with it. After that, I was always trying to go back and do another round, but around 2017, we actually became profitable. So it kind of became more of a thing where, okay, well, we can just actually run the business on our own without having to go to like institutional fundraising. And we just started to use the money that we had made to continue to build on the business.
But are there any types of institutional fundraising funds available or grants for foreigners starting businesses out there in Korea, like, or anything in that nature?
Yes, I'll say yes. But it's like anything else, it's relationships. The reality is I could sit here and complain that, when we were really trying to go full forth with a lot of the competitors that we had, we wanted, to raise money like they were raising. Every week we'd see so-and-so raise $20 million, so-and-so just raised $50 million. So when we were like, man, we built something that is, worthy of getting a decent enough fundraise, we would go and meet with a lot of these Korean VCs, and they'd always kind of like pat you on the head and be like, wow, you guys are really great, but they wouldn't give you any money, So it was always kind of like that, like they were proud of you, but they weren't really willing to take the risk and hand you a check. So we kind of took that in stride, and it kind of made us force us to really be more in tune with our core business and actually optimize our business to make it even more profitable. And so it felt really great when we actually started being able to give dividends to our early investors without actually having to take any institutional money. But I actually just started a new business. It's a virtual coffee shop that's all it's like a chain of coffee shops, but it's all done through the delivery apps. And this business, I was actually finally able to raise some institutional money from. So that felt good, to get that money from an actual institutional investor, because that kind of was like a thing that was always bothering me. It was like I knew I had something that was worth being invested in, but it was just tricky to get them to see the vision. But this, I just signed a deal last week, so that was great. And to answer your other question, a lot of these government grants, they're really not focused for foreign people at all, because it's all in Korean. But with this company I just mentioned, it's a virtual coffee shop called Drip Drop. I was able to actually get one of the first ones of these, like the grant had ever been given to like a foreign person. So that was pretty cool too. So it's changing. The point I'm trying to make is things are changing in Korea. So you have to kind of constantly be, flexible, because they're trying to get it right.
Right. Okay. And I know you mentioned a few organizations earlier that were trying to encourage foreign business out there in Korea as well. What were the names of those organizations that would, so that people can check for information or potentially see some of these resources?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought it back up. There's an organization called Seoul Global Startup Center, and we were actually one of the cohort members of that organization as well for Shuttle. But unfortunately, they closed it because I think the government sentiment was kind of like, oh, these foreigners are not really taking advantage of this opportunity very well. So we need to maybe, look at this again and see if we need to, either change it or something. I have heard rumors that they're gonna start it back up again soon. But we were one of the last cohorts that was invited into the Seoul Global Startup Center, and they give you like 20,000 USD. Sometimes less, sometimes more. We were one of the further along companies in their little cohort. So I think we got the max amount, which was I think 20,000 USD. But they start with like little checks of maybe even like 5,000 or something like that, depending on what stage of your business that it's in. So if you present your concept to them, they'll decide if they'll give you money and allow you to get the resources that are part of their organization. But I have heard that they'll bring it back. Maybe sometime next year. So.
Okay. Now, how about David? How about you in Japan? What was the route that you took for funding to get Soul Food House off the ground?
Well, one of my students actually in conversation was like, "So what's your dream?" I let him know what I wanted to do. He's like, okay. Went along. A few lessons later, he asked me again. The answer didn't change. He continued the questioning. So what do you need? And like within 2 months, he was like, I can do $1 million yen as pocket change and make an investment into you. So like, it's been the people that have believed in what I was doing that invested. We did do crowdfunding. We did a GoFundMe, but it's been the people that have observed and seen that we were trying to do something and knew that they could count on us, that put money forward and believed in the vision and helped us get to the base of what we needed.
Now, are there any specific places people can go to in regards to looking for types of funding that might be available in Japan?
Well, now that I'm in business, like I've started seeing all the subsidy sites and grant sites that are available, and most of them are still in Japanese, but they're available. And like the different wards have their own funds for subsidies and grants to help businesses get started. And it can be as small as like 100,000 yen or like $100,000 that they put into your business based off of what you're trying to do. And a crazy amount of low interest loans now, especially with Corona. But where I started was in Itabashiku, which is further away from like the central area of Tokyo. And the different wards have different focuses. So what we were trying to do for a restaurant wasn't fit for subsidies and grants in that area, but in areas like Minato-ku, where I am now, like they're encouraging people to start businesses and feeding to make sure they can rebuild the economy. So they're basically setting people up to get started so that they can have everything they need, and they have English support in Minato-ku.
Okay.
So yeah, it makes it completely different. They actually do have the forms in English for you to fill out and look through. So it's changed, and I've been in Japan 17 years. Within that time, there's a lot more English information available that's not translated English information, but actual English. And yeah, it's gotten better.
Okay. So now, being that this is, again, not your home countries, how did you deal with immigration statuses and licensing for the businesses you were doing, or even just, because some people come over and they're on certain work visas. Like, is there a specific visa that you get when you start a business, or is there something that you have to do? I see David wants to say something there.
Oh, I want to start with this one because I don't have a university degree. So I spent 10 years as a dependent, which means I couldn't legally hold like a full-time job. So the only way for me
one second, just a quick thing for people. One of the main ways people at least come out to Japan is by getting a work visa, and usually it requires a bachelor's degree to get that work visa. So go ahead.
So without a university degree, you either have to be highly skilled, or a company has to hire you. Basically, a Japanese company has to hire you with justification of why they're hiring you. And one moment, I'll be right back.
I'll come back to you.
I'm actually working right now, So I'm answering questions and working.
I know you never stop. I get it. You got to keep it moving. So we'll come back to you. Let me take that to Mike. So was there anything in regards to immigration and visa that you have to deal with? I know you said, I think you're active duty military right now, right?
So yeah, when it comes down to it, the immigration piece is a big factor in Korea, because without the right visa starting off, you can't get the business. So when I started, what a lot of Americans do in military that have businesses here, they get someone named to put it in and someone they trust. I can't like tell everyone what the key is to finding someone that you trust, because those factors are different for each individual, but it has to be somebody that you trust. And once you work that out, then the process getting the business license is not so difficult. The only other thing where it comes to, if it's your places of, if you want to do a restaurant or a bar or something like that where people are going to frequently visit and sit down, when you get over a certain size of space, the fire inspection is very important if you're going to be on a floor that's second floor and above, because these buildings, they come bare. The things that come like essential in American buildings, well, actually, I never bought American commercial building, but you have to install your own hot water heater, electronic hot water heater, all these other nuances and things that you got to install. Now they're starting to build the buildings with the fire prevention and safety systems built in, but the cost to get into those buildings may be higher. And so sometimes it's more beneficial to get a building where there was a previous tenant in that building before, and it's not a brand new building. I'm sorry, this
Yeah, no, that makes
no,
sense.
popped up, but
That
yeah,
makes-
so yeah, so that's what it entail, and I'm pretty sure Jay know what I'm talking about, because he said he had the nightclubs and everything. Once you get beyond a certain square footage, now you're looking at fire safety. And just these guys to come look through the fire and safety inspection. And my place isn't very, it's not very small, but it's not very big. They charge me like 2 million won. Which is about $2,000 just to do a fire safety inspection. And so there are a lot of nuances to it, but once you get the business license, I do feel like it's a little bit easier. Like Dave was saying, now he has access to more stuff once he got started. So
right. And I think that's important to note when both you mentioned, when we're talking about the visas, that visas are very specific in what it is that you're allowed to do if you have a certain visa. So for myself, I have a specialist in humanities visa. So there are certain jobs that I'm not allowed to do in Japan. And so, like you said, you know, there's certain things you couldn't do. So you got somebody you trusted to be able to put that business in.
right. Now I don't have that problem anymore. My kids are half Korean, so I have access to visa, and I've gone through that process. But for others who don't, you need a Korean. You need a foreign national that has the right Korean visa.
Right. So, David, you there? We got you back.
I am back. Sorry about that.
All good.
So, like, as a dependent, in order to change my visa, I had to become a business investor to get a business investor visa. But the catch-22 of that is I needed to prove that I had an establishment to work at. I had 2 employees. Like, the list of things that you need includes usually an accumulated 5 million yen in working capital. So basically, I had to put the money out and start working without the visa to be able to apply for the visa. And yeah, it's not easy when people don't want to rent you a property without the proper visa to do the
Right.
business.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So it's a winding road of confusion of how to do it when you're already here.
right. And just to clarify, 5 million yen is about 50,000,
50,000, give or
roughly.
take. Well, I mean, it's far less now with the conversion rate, but
Right. Now, David, I know you do your business with your wife, and you're both from the States. But I think Mike, you said that you had your children are Korean. So I'm assuming your wife is Korean. So was that a little bit of an easier way of getting your licenses and things straight because you had a native basically on your team?
So I actually divorced, and so when I started my business, I thought I could not get a visa, even though I couldn't get it because we're divorced. So that was an obstacle because now I found myself divorced and I could no longer do what I set out to do. So could I still get it? But go back to what Jay was saying, I never asked the question. If I would have asked the question long time ago, I would have started a business well before the pandemic. And I never asked the question, hey, can I still have a visa even though I'm divorced? And when I finally asked the question, I was like relieved to know I can still like get that type of family visa, even though we're divorced. But the tie to it was the kids. And
Right.
but then again, you never know till you ask. So when it comes to the visa stuff in Korea, each immigration district runs things their own way. They have their own rules, and the gatekeeper is the gatekeeper. Do not piss off the gatekeepers. Don't do that because it just doesn't benefit you to do that. And they hold all the cards anyway. And so that was the major two things when it came to my visa situations that always ask questions and ask the follow-up questions and don't piss off the gatekeepers. Two major things.
Okay. So let's go talking about as far as branding and the community. So Jason, how did you go about branding your business and make it where it was welcomed by the local community as coming in as a foreigner, in Korea?
Yeah, it was tricky at first, because I think they automatically assume some things that were just not true. Like, when I met a lot of Koreans, they were always so blown away with our app. They were like, this is pretty good. And then after a while, it kept getting better and like, this is actually good. And it was like, wow, why don't I know about this? And I think they just automatically assumed that we didn't have it available in their language, which was not the case. It was always bilingual. We've always had it in both languages, but I think they just kind of already had the assumption that, oh, those foreigners do that one. That must be for the foreigners. So I'm just gonna use the one I have. And that was kind of the case for a while. Obviously, we had moments where we were able to kind of break through the Korean kind of demographic sometimes. Like for one instance, we were like on a little Korean TV show, and that kind of really had a little moment where people saw us as like actual, real, a real platform that they could use. But again, lately we've actually just said, it's better for us, it's more cost effective for us to just go and approach our own expat community. So we've kind of doubled down, so to speak, more so on that lane. And more of it comes down to just like the economics of it. To get a Korean customer in our industry, it might cost upwards to $60, sometimes $100. It's called the CAC, the cost acquisition to acquire. And so we don't want to spend that much money to acquire a customer that could just leave immediately. You have them in your ecosystem and then maybe they're dissatisfied or maybe they think, okay, this doesn't work for me, I'll just go to the other competitor. So you just spent $60 to $100 for no reason. Where the expat cost acquisition to acquire, it's actually so much cheaper. It's like, sometimes between $2 to $4. So, and those people stay with you. Like I'm sure Mike knows, like, a lot of the people here in Korea are military affiliated. And as long as they're here, they'll try to, support. And as long as you don't do anything that's gonna make them feel like you don't appreciate their business, they'll just stay within the ecosystem. So we've kind of put more of our energy into kind of keeping those people satisfied and making more of a community with those folks. And that's kind of been our angle. We've been really just trying to double down on that and doing more to make those people feel like we appreciate them.
Now, what would be the main thing that you guys would say for people who want to get into business out in Korea or Japan, on how they can find and connect to that community that they want to service, whether it's the general public, Japanese public, Korean public, or even the expat community? How would you find that group to court?
I think I don't want to take over, but I'll answer real quick. The thing is, I think nowadays, there's a whole lot being said about like tribalism. And I think that there's tribes everywhere you go now. There's people who they belong to multiple tribes. Like some people are gamers, some people are foodies, some people are people who really love, cryptocurrency. I mean, there's just so many different little tribes now, and you have to just be honest and be, truthful. Like, what tribes do you belong to? And if you belong to them, people will actually feel that genuine, connection. Like if we like the same sports team, Jay, like I'm a diehard Laker fan. And if people like the Lakers, we both like the Lakers, and I'm coming to, all these little community groups and I'm saying, hey man, you saw the game with LeBron went off. And, oh man, Jason's a good guy. Like, what do you do, Jay? Oh, I run a food delivery app. Oh man, I'm gonna use your app, man. So to me, I feel like it's more organic if you approach it from like what you actually like and just combine all your tribes instead of trying to do this blanket marketing tactic. Because people can kind of see through that nowadays. I feel like, I don't know, I can't speak for the other guys. So we've been kind of doing more of that. And it kind of has like really changed my frame of thinking in terms of just trying to create something that's a cure-all or an answer for everybody. I think, David made some great points about soul food in Japan. I'm sure people are curious, but what's going to take them to pull the trigger? I think they'll pull the trigger if they like David, maybe. They'll be like, oh, he's a good dude. Like, I'm gonna go try some of his food. And then they're like blown away. So I think it kind of works like that, maybe. I don't know.
Now, David seemed to connect with that point that you mentioned, as far as basically, you do your crowd, you work to your crowd, and that kind of attracts things. And I know some of David's journey, you guys do you, and that attracts people to come in, and you bring them into your ecosystem, into your living room type of thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, ever since we've opened, we're always approached by the different review sites talking about let me promote you, let me pay to promote you. And it doesn't really draw me because, one, they're trying to connect with my money, not with me, to get me to use their service. And they've never eaten my food. They don't really know my business. So I can't trust them to do the job to connect to my customer if they don't even know what they're trying to allow people to get access to. So for me, when I'm doing like my social media stuff, I'll make sure that I know what people want and experiment with what I think they may want to offer them something genuine that I like or that I think they may like. And it works in that you're not trying to be, well, I know best. I'm like, So what do you want to eat? What do you want to do? What do you want to drink? I want to know. That way I can decide whether or not I'm going to add a special to the menu. And once you hit them with the special of something that they requested, they tell other people, wait, did you know if you email in advance, you could possibly get something that you've been missing? It starts the relationship of knowing that you're caring about the people that you're serving. And I've always simplified my demographic of who I'm serving. The hungry people. Like if you're hungry, it doesn't matter your nationality, your age, your gender, any of that. My service is to feed you, to feed your body, to feed your soul. If you're hungry, I'm here to give you food. And it works for people because there's a connection of comfort and knowing that somebody is going to take that time to feed you.
And so Mike, how do you get that first customer in the door? I mean, you're in a foreign country, you're a foreigner. You know, there are different communities around. How do you get that first customer in the door?
You know, I just had to go out and shake hands because I want to say part of it is within the research phase, to be honest, because if you open an establishment, you're going to tell your friends, yo, I'm going to open a business. I want you to come through, yada, yada, yada. You telling coworkers. So, you know, you got to tell those initial people before you start, and you're promoting it. Then as you walk around, you know, you're the president of your business. You're CEO. You're the president. You got to walk around, shake hands, kiss babies on the forehead, all that stuff. You know, there's some humility in there because there's some people that you know who are in positions to bring customers to you, and you may not too much like those people or like how they move or whatnot. But you got to put some of those personal feelings aside and be like, hey, this is about business. And sometimes you just have to smile and nod with people. And then sometimes you have to give back a little bit. Like, yeah, come on in. I let you get a free drink. We talk. And then as you just talk to people just about what you do, like David said, you know, he started talking about something different. I think David and Jay both hit on this. You start talking about something different that has nothing to do with business. Then they ask you, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a business owner. I got a spot over here. Come by sometime. And so that's the start of getting those initial customers.
Okay. Now we got a couple of questions from the audience. And this first question is from someone that's living in the States and they have a service-based business. They do writing and conference and event planning. And wants to know how to begin to determine if there's a need for such a business in Korea or Japan. Is there an event planning? Is there an option for this type of business in Korea or Japan, you think?
It's complicated because I'm not in that area. So for me, I would have to do the research. Like it all goes down to research for everything you want to do. Even if there's not a scene niche or path for it, sometimes let the research take you to where you see what people are doing and find the way that you can present what you're doing in a different way that would appeal to the people that are in a different area than what's already in the market.
Right. Okay. And you kind of do a little, maybe not as a business on the side, but do events and whatnot with your Legacy Foundation. And you've got not only Soul Food House, but Legacy Lounge, which hosts events and things like that. So how is that something that you determined would be an option or that, you know, that people might be interested in?
The lounge was created because I wanted someplace that was above ground that we as African Americans in diaspora could go to that wasn't like a dive bar, an underground place, but someplace that makes people go, okay, I see y'all. Because it's like, if you have a place that you can gather and bring people to that makes you feel good, it's gonna make the people that come into it feel good. So why always find somebody else's place to go to when you just create your own place?
Yeah, okay. Now, this is another question, and this is for each of you. What was the greatest challenge that each of you faced in getting your businesses started or getting on this path? Let's start with Jason.
I think, like anything else, the hardest part is just to start, right? Anybody will tell you, like, you'll sit there and try to convince yourself a million times all the reasons not to do it. But, eventually you just got to kind of pull the trigger if you really done your research. I think both Mike and David and myself, we've all kind of kept ringing out the whole research thing. I just want to double back on what David said about the other question. I could tell you that there's a need for something, but that's just my point of view. I mean, I get customers who tell me stuff all the time. You guys should do this, you guys should do that. But at the end of the day, I have to have that conviction to really pull through and say, all right, I'm gonna do it, even if it doesn't work, like at first. Like I think, these guys both had mentioned when they first tried, maybe it wasn't working, but you have to have that conviction to keep going. So even if that thing exists or doesn't exist, doesn't really matter as much as the conviction that you think you're doing the right thing. And just to kind of answer that question that, she mentioned as well, the riches are in the niches, you hear that all the time. So event planning might be, I did event planning before I opened my club. The way I did it was different from the other event planning where we were trying to bring in international DJs. So in Korea at the time, they would only have local DJs do the events and parties and stuff. But we were bringing in guys like, we brought like Just Blaze. We brought like, DJ Premier. We brought like, some guys who they had never seen because they had only seen their local DJs. So that presented an opportunity for me to kind of expand into actually owning a venue eventually. But it was because I didn't approach it from, do they have event plan? But I was like more specific, like what's the niche I can bring to the table specifically? And so to answer that question, I think, obviously there's always a need. I always think about it like this, and maybe these other guys think of it too, like we're always trying to fill out some white space in the market. There's always some white space somewhere. If you could figure it out, you can kind of, put yourself into it. And that's kind of my thought process, is to just, have that conviction that you really believe in the thing that you're trying to do and just pull the trigger, because it's never going to be the perfect time ever. You just got to decide that it's something you want to do,
And what about you, Mike, the greatest challenge?
This question kind of combines the answer for the previous question and with this question, because even to get started in any business, in my advice for I want to say Lauren, my advice for Lauren is set out how much money that you would like to make. What would it be worth your time to do? Because it could be a great idea, but for you specifically, it may not be cost effective for you to do a certain business. If after you do your analysis, you put your numbers in a spreadsheet, which goes into what the challenge was, it's just number one, like Jay said, you got to get started, right? And mitigating everything within the research. Like, okay, I can't find this thing. This is easier to find in the States because I can go to Home Depot and get it. But how do I find it in Korea? And that end up taking me down to another road of other stuff and on a journey. And one example of that is bolts. So screws and bolts are not always sold at the same hardware store. There's a bolt store and a screw store, which is totally crazy. Then after I find out there's two separate stores, there is one store that was close to me the whole time. So it's just those nuances of, just knowing your area and just getting started and doing that research. And so combined with that challenge, the second challenge with me was just COVID, and that's just explains itself. But for just doing a business event planning, my advice to you, Lauren, just start off in a spreadsheet. What do you need to do event planning, and just kind of go from there, and how much profit that you want to make. One last point on that, one example of how to like kind of formulate your research, a show that I like to watch, I love Shark Tank, because people have great ideas on Shark Tank. The sharks are not always right. Sometimes the shark just say, hey, I don't understand how the profits are made or understand the business model, so I'm going to bow out. Not to say that person has a bad idea. It's just that they have to understand it. So sometimes I put myself through this process of, if I can explain it to like the lowest level of intelligence, can that person understand where the profits of what the process is and where it comes from? So just make sure it's worth your time and money to do the business. If not necessarily scrap that idea, but maybe fine tune it a little bit to where it can be worth your time. And then if it doesn't fit, and if it's not worth your time after that, then don't risk it if you don't have to.
Okay. I think that's pretty good information, pretty good tip there. Now, there was also another question that came through asking, are there any gender biases in Korea or Japan that should be considered when doing business? I know Japan is pretty much of a stronger patriarchal society. I don't know much about Korea, but is there anything that you think people should be aware of in that regard? Jason?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like you kind of hit it dead on the head. We're in these Confucianism type cultures here in Japan and in Korea, all of the kind of East Asian countries. And so they all have this kind of old school mentality where, women are maybe not looked at as the boss. Like I've had a lot of moments where it was like weird, like I'd have like a female, either my colleague or a female, even co-founders, and I'd have a meeting, and immediately the men or even the women will come to me and be like talking to me or giving me more attention, and just kind of like not paying attention at all to the woman. And I had to kind of correct that. I'm like, hey, this is my partner. Actually, she's not like your little coffee getter, because in Korea that's like a thing. The woman should go get the coffee for the business meeting. So I would purposely go get the coffee myself to bring to the table, so that the women wouldn't have to be looked at as kind of like a secondary participant in the meeting that we would have, because I want them looked at with the same respect that they give me. So yeah, to answer your question, I know that was quite long-winded, and I apologize. Try to give you a little anecdote. But yeah, it can be tricky. There are gender biases. There are racial biases. But it's like anything else. Like people respond to if you're doing your job well, or you look like you have it together. If you look like you have it together, at the end of the day, now my co-founder, she's a woman. She goes into the room and they take notice. Like, yes, Depyonim, like Depyonim is like boss in Korea. So it's a different scene now that she's kind of established herself.
Right. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. One of the things I know out in Japan, as far as business and just doing anything or getting things started, it has to do with the relationships, and it has to do with you actually putting in work. And once you get that hurdle, there are going to be some of those biases, but you can turn a little bit of that around if you either got a certain introduction or you're handling your business a certain way. And I would want to ask if David's got a second to answer that question, because I know his business partner is his wife, and
Oh, I have a second to answer this.
I know she's business.
So she is the face of the business in all reality because she's the chef. But in certain circumstances, people will bypass her and ask me questions. And I'm like, look, I'm not the person you need to talk to. The person you need to talk to is right there. And they realize because she has a very friendly, open personality, she's very well received once people get to know who she is. But a lot of times people will try talking business with the guy. I'm like, look, she's the one that sets the prices for the food. She's the food coordinator, the event coordinator. You need to go talk to her. Come to me to pay me, but talk to her to set the event up. So the gender bias dies down real fast when they know who they're dealing with.
So it sounds like the main thing is you have to set that boundary. If you're, if a partner of yours is a woman and they're having a gender issue, like you have to be there to support that and set that boundary. Or if it's a woman coming in to do business, she's got to be like, no, the buck stops here. This I'm the boss, so you got to deal with me on this. So it sounds like they have to be firm in that regard.
It's always know who you should talk to.
Right.
Because that, again, research.
Right.
But also get to know the person. Because some people can be rough at the start, but in my experience, sometimes it's just their experience that people have done them in a way that they need to be standoffish at first to make sure they're protected. And I'm cool with that because I've been there. But once you find out who the person is, it makes it easier to be very direct and very genuine in how you deal with them. And it cuts the gender bias a whole lot. But you will always find those people that have that thought of, well, I think it should be this way. And they can be wrong. They're more than welcome to be wrong. But that doesn't mean you have to change how you see things.
Right. So what would be the best tip that you would give to someone wanting to start a business in Asia, in Japan or in Korea? What would be that first one? Real quickly, it looks like we're coming up on time. So short answer, what would be that tip?
Without passion, don't.
Okay.
I don't have the liberty to sugarcoat it. If you don't have a passion for what you're going to do, don't pursue it because it will turn you bitter in the process because it wasn't what you really wanted to do.
Absolutely. Because there's going to be a lot of hurdles to go through. I think in any business, there's going to be some hurdles, but I would imagine there's a few more doing it in a foreign country, in a foreign language. If you don't have that passion and willing to put in an effort, it's just going to eat you up. How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just take David's quote. I love it. And just roll with that. But I'll say also, don't let it get in your way if you really are afraid. Fear is always going to be there. I would say, the cool thing about it, and I think we all touched on that. Mike touched on it, David touched on it, we all touched on it. Is sometimes it's an advantage to come to a foreign country with fresh eyes. It's like an example I gave earlier. I think all of us kind of came with fresh eyes to a problem that we saw because we didn't have that kind of blockage that the locals might have. They have this mentality that it should be this way, but you come to the country and you're like, well, why couldn't it be this way? So I think it's kind of sometimes an advantage to just come and check it out and see, where you might be able to fill out that white space. Who knows what that white space might be for you?
Absolutely. That's a very good point. How about you, Mike?
You have to do the research. You have to do the research. The numbers and the math has to make sense. Your desires and the math can make sense together. And so make sure you do that research. And once you have that research done and you see that it is economically feasible for you to do what you're trying to do, then go for it. And when you go for it, make sure you have that passion behind you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely appreciate all the information and experiences that you all shared. So I want to as we round things out, want to get some final words of advice from you, and let people know where they can, reach out to you or find more information on your business and where you're at, and see if you guys do any business consulting or any of that type of thing. So let's start off with David, and tell them, a little final advice where they can find you, find the business and whatnot. And if you could briefly mention something about Legacy Foundation.
So you can always find me on Instagram, Soul Food House. If you type in Soul Food House, I'm going to be the only thing that comes up initially. Website is soulfoodhouse.com. For the lounge, it's Legacy Lounge Juban, and that's connected to Legacy Foundation Japan. So you'll always be able to keep up to date with what's going on with the foundation, where we have events, where we have opportunities for even things like these types of discussions to help the community grow stronger together. Check the foundation out at Legacy FJP on Instagram, legacyfoundationjapan.com. And most of my business consulting has been just in passing conversation. I should probably put a charge to it, but that's not the point of it.
And some of that is what Legacy Foundation does in a roundabout way as well, like give some of that information or some of those types of stuff, right?
That's a part of not recreating the wheel. Like,
right.
We've been through enough that we can tell someone if they're walking towards the cliff, hey, I've seen that cliff. I've been down that cliff. Don't do that. Walk this way. You'll be happier for it. I mean, unless you like spelunking and climbing back up, don't walk down that cliff.
Absolutely. Jason, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the cool thing about these types of chats are the fact that we can kind of, just have more exposure to things. There's always different ways that people can kind of, challenge themselves, do different things, find ways to, be their most authentic self. And like everybody who's listening to this, maybe starting their own business isn't the move for them, but maybe they were inspired in other ways. So, that's the beauty of having these types of chats. I'm glad that, you guys invited me. Like David said, you can always just reach out to me. I put all my information in the little chat. So you can email me, you can go to my LinkedIn and add me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm usually the most active. My personal website, you can also see me there. If you ever want to get some food delivered, go to Shuttle Delivery. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, just, I don't think I'll charge really. I've charged before, but it wasn't for something where this could actually maybe be really impactful for people, to do some type of consulting for them and help them maybe through their entrepreneurial journey. So.
Okay, so Shuttle Delivery, is that the website?
That's right.
Okay. Shuttle
delivery.kr. co.kr. That's the website. Obviously, we mostly do 99% of the business is done on the app, but you can always just go to the website. So.
Okay, and that website is Shuttle Delivery, right?
Shuttledelivery.co.kr.
Okay, that sounds good. And Mike, some last words of advice and where people can find you guys.
Okay, so yeah, just like I said, and just like everyone said, the research is very important because when I started everything that I was doing, I did a lot of research and a business plan. And when I say a business plan is not always something that's like this long document like normal institution asks for. I just use a spreadsheet in Excel because I know what I want to do. And unless I'm going to give this document to somebody, but really the business plan is just so you can have a guide. And just keep in mind that your business plan is a guide. It is not written in stone. You will have to change some things up. You have to change some things up to get customers through the door or to just really get things going. So I'm going to put all my information here in the chat. I put my address here in the address to KURO Restobar. Right here, I just put it all in the chat. I'll put the address there to KURO Restobar that's located just right here in Humphreys, near the walk-in gate and all that. In the near future, I will plan on doing some kind of consulting to where I do a general broad explanation because different areas are different. And so I only have experience dealing in the Pyeongtaek area of starting business. So everyone do business in this area, I will be doing some kind of consulting in the future, in the very near future. Just send me an email. I'll post my email information, my cell phone number information in the chat. So send me an email and I'll put you guys on the list. And once we get, I'm not going to charge for anything like the initial general consulting, but once we start getting down to one-on-one stuff and you really are ready to move forward and you have money in your hand ready to move forward to a business, then that will be something, that will be some kind of charge, but it's not going to be something that's going to break the bank because we have to charge for some things. And this is the last piece of advice I have. Evaluate your time properly. Do not undercut yourself. If you have a hamburger and you think your burger is worth 10,000 won, add 2 more to it because your time is valuable.
Okay, absolutely. All good bits of advice. I'm definitely going to be hitting y'all up on the LinkedIn's and all of that as well. And appreciate you taking the time. I agree with Jason. Like things like this are very helpful. Getting that information out there and also to show yourselves as examples of it being possible to do, especially in a foreign country. As you can see, we're on this talk here. David is still in the middle of the restaurant working, servicing customers at the same time, making it happen.
I'm in the lounge.
Oh, you're in the lounge right now. Okay. So yeah, so appreciate all of your time. Thank you everyone for coming out. The video will be up on YouTube at a later date when all that gets together. And thank you to BLM Korea for inviting us and the BLM Tokyo to collaborate with you on this Juneteenth event. And hopefully everything, something here that you could take away from it. There's something that you'll be able to work with in whatever you're trying to do. And I know BLM Korea has a closing video that they wanted to play. So if you are ready, Aaron or Sierra, EJ.
Yep, we're ready. I'll pull it right up.
All right.
Black Lives Matter because Black generational wealth matters. Black businesses matter. Black leadership matters. Black Lives Matter because Black families matter. Black history and education matter. Our Black children matter. We have taken our pain and used our resilience and creativity and reshaped it into the most beautiful music, the most beautiful art, and the most creative dances. You see it in the way we continue to persevere and create despite the wars raging against our communities. Our music, art, dance, and swag are often imitated, but it comes from such a deep place in our souls that it can never truly be duplicated. Black Lives Matter is not just about the senseless murders of our people. Black lives are about our laughter, our creativity, our strength in education and community. It's about our art, our families and businesses, our history, which is world history. It's about our swag. And most of all, Black lives is about our joy, our excellence. Black lives will always matter. Thank you for all of your support and participation these last 2 years. And remember, be the change you want to see. Thank you.
All right. And with that, EJ finally comes on camera. Do you have any final words yourself? Doesn't seem like the mic is on.
No, I just wanted to thank Jaylon. I wanted to thank you guys, David, Jason, Mike. Thank you so much for all the information. We really appreciate you taking your time out to just share this information with everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for Aaron holding down the back channel as well.
Producer.
Appreciate it. So again, thank you everyone for coming out, and you can reach out to the panelists, and I've also put BLM Tokyo's socials in the chat, which is twitter.com BLM Tokyo JP or Instagram.com BLM Tokyo JP. And reach out to anybody here if you've got any questions. And I guess this is if I'm not mistaken, this is a swan song for BLM Korea. Is this the final event?
Yes, it is. It is the final event. There are currently only 2 of us left. Aaron and I are the last of the great people who are doing BLM for the past 2 years. And we just wanted to leave on a great note. And I think that this event with you 4 guys was a great way to end it. So thank you.
All right. Everyone have a great evening or morning, wherever you're at. I know out here in Asia, it is evening. Yes, I agree with Lauren, your work mattered. I can only speak for what I have seen in the work that we've done with BLM Tokyo, and seen some of the messages that I've come across from people who have learned something new from things that we've put together, put out, seen things in a different way, seen opinions and things change. We've seen definitely some things out here in Japan. I would imagine in Korea, there's probably something similar.
I do think we made a difference since BLM started. And Jaylon, thank you so much for working with us. We really enjoyed it. And we were just so happy to have you join us with this event and also the Black Excellence Festival too.
Absolutely. No, this is great. It's wonderful. So,
and you, the panelists and moderator, please share information so we could network, create a generational Black wealth with you 4 guys, because I was so happy to see 4 Black men on this panel. And that made me so happy to see that. You know, we're changing lives, we're expanding, and I'm just in awe of all four of you. Thank you so much.